very last corner and we've left a nice big long piece of binding, and we've left a big gap between where we've sewn and done our reverse stitch up here and where we started originally. If you pull down this piece of binding from where you've just finished, you can trim it off just before where you've started your binding originally, say about here. Make sure you also remove any selvage end on the beginning of your binding as well. So take the beginning of your binding strip, place that out nice and flat, and then open it up so that you've got the wrong sides showing, and then fold this down to form a triangle that goes across so that this side of your fabric lines up with the edge of your strip, and it forms the point up in the corner. And then we can finger press right across that diagonal line. Give that a nice good finger press, then you can fold it back up in its half, and it should have a nice point looking like that. Once we have our nice point on this beginning part of your binding, we're going to get 3 pins, and we're going to make sure that this piece of the end of the binding is nice and flat, not pulled but nice and taut. And then we're going to lay our other piece down, again nice and flat, and where that tip of the triangle comes, we're going to put a pin just in the top layer of this back binding, about 2 or 3 millimeters just above that point. And then we're going to pull that bottom piece of binding open with our pin in it and flatten it out. Just move those 2 pins off to the side for a second. And then we're going to take our pointy end, open that up. We're going to put them right sides together with the corner right against that pin that we've placed in, the top of it in line with this back of the binding, and we're going to put a pin in this side and in this side of that folded line, because that folded line is where we're going to sew. So here it is pinned. Before we sew, we're going to take out that top pin because we don't need it anymore. We're going to put the needle in right at this point, and we're going to sew across here. I sometimes find that to get those 2 pieces of binding lying nice and flat together, that it helps if I clip up my bulk of my quilt so that there's no pressure on these 2 pieces of binding. Before we cut anything off, just let it fall back into its fold, and you'll see that it should sit reasonably nice and flatly against your quilt. We're then going to do the same, trimming 1/4 inch away from our seam as we did for the original binding. We're going to either take it to the iron or just do a finger press to open this seam. And then it will sit nicely, and we can continue back and sew that last bit of seam, and nobody will ever know where you started and stopped your binding.